Good morning. All right, we want to look at Jesus' words about adultery and lust. Very serious matter. We'll talk very directly. Verse 27 of Matthew 5, Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Remember, he is giving us the best information on the most important topics, and he's the smartest man who ever lived. Not just man, but God, man, but giving us this instruction and teaching for how to live our lives. Verse 27, you have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. Where'd they hear that? Well, they heard it in the law. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So he says, you've heard it was said, don't commit adultery. True enough. But I say to you, now remember, he's going back behind the law, or if we want to use another metaphor, underneath it, subtextually to the soil of the heart, out of which these kinds of actions like adultery, springing from lust, murder, springing from anger. So what he wants to do is get out the ground clear. Get out the ground clear and spray it down in the soil of our lives so that those things don't come up. And if the soil is marked by lust, then what's going to come up? Well, sexual sins is going to come up. So he's going to get at lust. And he starts off and he speaks, well, I'll call it lust untended, right? Beginning of verse 28. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. So I want you to think about looks, right? What's wrong with a look, right? Here's what happens with a lustful look. A lustful look is a leering, and you begin to think. You begin to turn things over in your head. And so here's where the battle comes. Old friend of mine used to talk about two things. He talked about airtime, how much time you give something in your head, like lust, for it to begin to generate this desire and this pressing for you to want. That's one thing. The second is what he called SUDS. It was an acrostic for seemingly unimportant decisions. So sometimes you set yourself up to be tempted to look lustfully. You go into an environment you don't need to go into. You can walk around environments. You can disengage environments. You don't have to go down this aisle where you're tempted to look at something that might be on the magazine rack or might be in front of your eyes, particularly as a man, though not exclusively as a man, but that might be put in front of you that would cause you a kind of temptation, and you can avoid it. You can turn your head. You can do whatever you need to. In the spirit of Proverbs, that says to the advice given by Solomon to his son, go far away from the adulteress. Far away is the idea. I want to quote to you C.S. Lewis about something to deal with this that he says in Mere Christianity that I think has great application here. He says, good and evil both increase at compound interest. That is why the little decisions you and I make every day are of such infinite importance. The smallest good act today is the capture of a strategic point from which, a few months later, you may be able to go on to victories you never dreamed of. An apparently trivial indulgence in lust or anger today is the loss of a ridge or a railway line or bridgehead from which the enemy may launch an attack otherwise impossible. In other words, by not taking the small battle seriously, a look, you set yourself up for a greater defeat later on. Heed those words, and guard your eyes. Like Job 31:1, I made a covenant with my eyes, he said, not to look lustfully at a woman. My challenge to you, guard even your looks so you protect the soil of your heart. May the Lord bless you today.